Welcome to the Goose One channel. So a few weeks ago, the 4th season of the popular superhero show The Boys started airing weekly. At the time of writing the script, at least. It's been so long, the season's been over for a few weeks, but you know. And so far, I've been enjoying it a lot more than I was enjoying Season 3. That's not to say that I don't like Season 3 at all. I think Jensen Ackles as Soldier Boy was great, and I think Yui had a great arc in that season. But I also think there was a lot that wasn't executed as well as it could have been. Let's put criticism of Season 3 aside though. This video is about Season 4, and in the run so far, the season might be over by the time this video dropped. That's what I wrote. That's what I wrote in this script. It is over. It's been over for a bit, you know. Let's just pretend we're in the past still. I've noticed one through line in pretty much every major character arc present in the season right now. Why is everyone so caught up with the past? No, seriously, this keeps happening. Firecracker exposes the secrets of Annie's past, Yui's dad experiences an expedited form of dementia after his V injection and is stuck in a state of mind when Yui was 11 years old. Hell, Butcher is literally seeing the ghost of his past due to the V-Dub tumor in his head. What's going on? I think the foremost examples of this are the two usual suspects, Butcher and Homelander. Homelander's story this season revolves squarely around his past, his trauma, as we see him finally tackle his upbringing in, well, not the healthiest way. Jonathan Homelander is a rubber band ball of entangled trauma and festering hatred, both for the ego and for everyone else. Every action he takes in this show, and especially in this season, is a reverberation of his trauma, the far-off consequences of the childhood that had been subjected to him. And while there seems to be an attempt on his part to face this trauma when he goes back to the labs where he was raised, this only seems to make everything worse. In episode 4, Wisdom of the Ages, he goes back to the lab where he grew up, where he was raised like cattle and raises hell. He takes joy in subjecting the scientists to immense suffering in a way to get back at them. All of this to portray himself as stronger, as better.
I gotta be honest with you, Marty. You really hurt my feelings.
I am very sorry.
And he passes this mentality, these insecurities on to Ryan as well. Or, well, he certainly tries to. You see, Ryan is caught between two paths. One path is that of Homelander's. Homelander wants to turn Ryan into a mini Homelander. He wants him to embody his grief and turn it into anger. He wants him to sharpen his trauma into hatred. In Homelander's ideal world, Ryan becomes another human-hating super fascist, continuing the traumatic cycle of violence that John himself has accepted as the natural order or even the preferred order of the world. The other path is the one taught to him by his mom and, well, Butcher to some extent. The matter becomes a bit more complicated when we step into Billy Butcher's side of the field. Because on one end, Butcher's more determined than ever to take revenge on Homelander for what he did to Becca, more determined than ever to kill any soup that steps in his path. And this murderous lust, this hate boner is personified in Joe Kessler. Every action of Joe's, every piece of advice he gives to Butcher is only in support of killing soups and even non-soups if it comes down to it, with Samir as a good example. Following Joe's advice to drug Ryan almost completely destroyed their relationship. Kidnapping Samir almost got Kimiko killed, and Butcher himself is getting worse by the day. But then we have Becca. Becca is an interesting case. By all means, she is a ghost from Butcher's past, one he can't manage to let go, one he can't stop blaming himself for. Yet she explicitly pushes him to move forward, to forgive himself. And while Kessler is often framed in darkness, I think Becca is very obviously framed as a point of light in Butcher's life, in his psyche. So, what does this mean? Well, in my opinion, it all pretty clearly demonstrates that The Boys Season 4 is about trauma and accepting trauma, moving on from it, growing as a person and allowing yourself to move forward from it. That being stuck in the past, that flaying yourself for past trauma eternally is not only self-destructive, but also destructive to everyone around you. And this message is so clear when we look at the dichotomy between who is portrayed as being good and who is portrayed as doing bad. Let's take Firecracker, for example. Upon being introduced to Firecracker, her role within the story becomes entirely obvious. She's Starlight's foil. For the past few seasons, Starlight has been trying to confront her past, her flaws, and everything that's happened to her to the best of her ability. She's done her best to work through her trauma, not forgive or forget, but to at least not try to let it destroy her life as much as it really could. Firecracker's never been able to do that though. Years ago, when both the girls were contenders in the child pageant circuit, Annie said some nasty shit about Firecracker, and ever since, she's had an unquenchable grudge, a hatred boiling inside of her, and this hatred, this fire inside of her has festered. It's turned her into a nasty, hateful person. It's destroyed her, and with each passing day, this obsession has turned her nastier and nastier. And this tendency is obviously portrayed as a bad thing. All of Firecracker's evil tendencies are an effect of her lifelong inability to work through her trauma. And I don't want to put this as some kind of problem for her as a person or for anyone as a person, but I also don't want to use it to excuse her actions themselves. I'll put it like this. Firecracker's past with Starlight is something that's ruined her life, that's traumatized her. She's never had the ability or the help necessary to work past this event or these events in her life, and so the hate has only been able to fester inside of her. This isn't an excuse for her rampant racism and PDF-philia, but it does go to... Why did I pronounce it like that? PDF-philia. I don't know if I have to say it like that, but just whatever. But it does go to show how much trauma can ripple throughout your life if you can't face it at some point, if you can't get the help you need. And again, this is the case for everyone the show portrays as bad or as making the wrong choice at any point, especially in this season. Like Frenchie being unable to forgive himself for the crimes of his past. Yui's continued but eventually resolved hatred for A-Train. I could go on, but I mean, I think you get it. But if this is portrayed by the show as the wrong way to deal with trauma, then what's the right way? In the first half of the season, we follow Yui's dad being taken into the hospital after suffering a stroke. The first 2 episodes of the subplot revolve around Yui, his mom, and the struggle over whether they want to keep him alive in this vegetative state or, well, let him go. Eventually, Yui comes up with the idea to use Compound V on his father, getting a sample from A-Train and carrying it with him to his father's hospital bed. To simplify a bit, the V is eventually injected into his father's veins and he wakes up from his coma. Hooray! This would ostensibly be a good thing, but slowly we figure out that not all is right. Yu's memory is failing, and eventually the V starts to manifest into a set of powers for the Campbell father. And this is where things really start to go wild. Yu's memory really begins to go backwards here, referring to an almost permanent state of his son Yui still being an 11-year-old boy, and by extension a version of himself still hugely affected by his wife leaving him. And so, almost at the sight of his wife, Yu uncontrollably rampages through the hospital, hurting himself emotionally and everyone else physically. Eventually, Yui and his mother manage to confront the man, and his trauma-laden rant berating Daphne, Yui's mom, for abandoning them makes it all clear as day.
Daphne?
Yeah.
What are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. You left.
But I came back. Remember?
I did everything for you. And you looked through me like I wasn't even there. You ruined my life. Huey's life.
Dad, stop.
Get down on the ground now.
Oh,
Sir?
oh. Wait. No.
Even if we account for the fact that Yu is in a reverted state of mind, this is still a traumatic event for him. This is something that ruined him. And while we could speculate that this turned him into the timid, emotional pushover we see him as for the most of the show, we can at least attribute what's currently happening to this trauma and his inability to face it head on. That's when Yui manages to sway him, though. Yui, through facing his own trauma and accepting that forcing his dad to stay alive is not only self-destructive but also destructive for everyone around him, manages to make his father calm down. And so, in a literal display of digesting and truly working through his trauma, him and his father make the joint decision to let Yu go. And really, that's what Becca, the Brain Ghost version, wants Butcher to do, right? She's the part of Butcher that wants him to move past all the guilt and grief, that wants to tell him, hey, your trauma is fucked up and it's going to keep haunting you forever, but playing yourself for everything by committing yourself to this shit isn't going to help you or anyone else. It's going to destroy you and destroy everything and everyone you love. And it's also exactly what Joe can't allow him to do. Joe is the V tumor. It is the direct consequence of Butcher using the Temp V in Season 3. Joe is literally Butcher's trauma personified. The destruction of himself and everyone around him turned material. Joe Kessler is the rage, the itch in his brain that would lead him to genocide. The destruction of everyone he cares about, including himself. And that's kind of crazy, right? Really, this is kind of a basic thematic analysis, but this main theme really was the only thing I could think of whenever a new episode dropped, and I wouldn't be surprised if there are some people who didn't see this larger thread throughout the season. There might be some more The Boys videos later, but it's gonna be a while off from this one, so consider subscribing? Maybe? Either way, this is where I'm gonna end this video. I had a lot of fun watching this season and talking about it. I'd love to hear some of your guys' thoughts about it or this video. And with that said, please consider liking the video, subscribing, pledging to my Patreon, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Yeah!